Hi.
Hello, welcome to the Wednesday Club.
Today we're talking about Rick and Morty.
We interrupt our Rick and Morty conversation
to bring you more
to bring
Rick
you
and
comic
Morty.
books.
Yeah, we were talking Rick and Morty right
They
before.
actually do comics, but that isn't what
Yeah,
we're
they do.
talking about
They do.
today.
That's
so
not
we
what
just
we're
wanted to
talking
start by disappointing you.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Wednesday Club.
Which is so Rick and Morty, actually.
It's so Rick and Morty.
We're here
yeah.
to disappoint.
We were talking about Pickle Rick and how Pickle Rick, in my opinion, is the greatest hour of television ever, even though it was only 24 minutes.
Yeah.
So, oh hi, the camera's on me. I guess we're doing this. My name is Matt Key, and I'm behind the counter today for the Wednesday Club, talking about a topic that I know relatively little about. Ooh. But I'm behind the counter because I know that you guys know about the Robins, and I'm excited to learn from you. Like every Wednesday I'm excited to learn from you guys. I'm the luckiest Wednesday Club fan ever, like I like to say. But before we start, why don't you guys jump into my monologuing and tell me who you are?
If I knew that, I probably would have a lot more of my life together at this point. That's a big question. I think it's certainly a bigger question than we have time for. But my name is Taliesin Jaffe, and you can find me at Executive Goth on most of the social medias. To my right.
I'm Amy Dallen. Welcome to the Wednesday Club.
At Enthusiasm.
Yeah, we'll say that at the end. You know where to find
At
Do
the
the who dat in the chat. It's good.
Yeah. So if you didn't see our rampant social media-ing, comma, apostrophe, media-ing. Socialing. Oh, socialing. That works.
It's so awkward today. It's great.
We're the Wednesday Club. Oh, yeah. Ken Wynn. Damian Wayne.
Yay.
Holy Robin, Batman.
Is that Tim or Damien?
That's Damien.
That's Damien. That's totally
See how
he's got the little mask.
he's got the armor.
Face.
attitude and 13-year-old boy hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a quitely face in that mask.
Yeah, and the armor. I mean, it is a little Tim Drake, but you can see that that's an evolution from Tim Drake.
Tim and Damien have a little bit in common.
Yeah, a little
Who are
bit.
these people? What are we talking about?
We're talking about Robins.
What's that voice? I don't know. We're talking about Robins.
I was burping while I was drinking coffee. Things happened.
Yeah, that's fair.
Hey, go on though.
So we're talking about Robins.
So I'm
They're
not
wee
going to say.
birds, aren't they?
They're tiny birds. I was not going to say for those of you who don't know, but I give up. That's apparently what we say now.
That's what we do.
It is what we do.
Look
at all those
beautiful
robins.
Picture. We are counting Steph.
That's.
Let's just lay it out right at the beginning of the episode.
Of course, we're counting Steph.
I don't think she's in continuity, but I don't think her time as Robin is still in continuity. But we don't care.
Why would she not? Like, was that Flashpoint New 52 that made her not in continuity?
They decided to sort of etch a sketch her out of continuity almost altogether, and then they brought her back.
In 2011, they tried to simplify, and they were like, Batman's only been Batman for 5 years, so we'll have to squish everything that matters from his past into those 5 years, and not everything landed in, but other things slowly kept getting introduced, and everybody pointed out, even the stuff you were talking about wouldn't fit in 5 years, so it's not like it made sense anyway. So slowly things have telescoped back out to fit most of the stuff that had already happened, and Steph has come back into the picture, but as far as I know, they have not reestablished that she spent some time as Robin for reasons that we'll probably get into later on.
I'm certainly going to be asking those questions because, like, she's the one Robin that I know the least about.
She's a fascinating Robin. She's a fun Robin to talk about. We're going to talk about all the Robins.
No, we're going to talk about all the Robins.
All the Robins.
All the Robins. Tony Robbins, even. We're going to bring him.
Jerome Robbins?
Yeah, we're going to bring all of them in.
We are a little loopy today. We are genuinely a little loopy.
I put LSD in the coffee.
I haven't started my coffee yet. Will it help?
Yeah,
okay,
it totally
cool.
will.
Get back
So
to you.
let's start at the beginning, and when we get to the end, we'll stop.
The beginning, Damian Wayne.
Don't confuse people. Dick
Detective
Grayson.
Comics number 38, 1940.
Dick Grayson. Yeah, well, we've got Dick Grayson. Wow, you knew the number. Batman.
I like first appearances.
Batman has had a lot of evolution over his time. He started out like guns were not a problem at the beginning. There was like deciding whether or not he was fighting criminals or like supervillains was kind of a thing. And
I feel like it was more the comics code that kind of like changed all of that, right? Like he was like,
getting there.
I'm gonna kill all these gangsters. Now they're off the streets. And the comics code was like,
things got weird when we got to the comics code. But
gonna have to
one
do
of the
that
things.
That's the 50s. It's 15 years in the future right now.
Yeah. One of the things that we bring in is the idea of a child sidekick as sort of a character for the readers to identify with.
And this is relatively quick because the first appearance of Batman is in Detective Comics 27, and as Matt just said, I don't know if that book was every month or every other month at that point in time, but it's still not a lot of issues between 27 and 38.
Wow, look at that cover.
Love it.
Not
Bless you, Robin.
So, and
Nothing subtle about you.
short shorts.
And this was, and I love that he's like bursting through like a drum.
Characters don't get to wear pants
No,
anyway.
that's a circus hoop.
It's a
circus hoop.
It's a circus hoop, but like it has a background to it, or because his cape is flying, so you know the black behind him isn't a cape. Like, what is the background?
I don't know. That's weird.
Who
what I
set
wanna
up
know.
the curtain behind the circus hoop?
Yeah,
What is the
like, that is-
in-continuity explanation for this publicity photograph of the Robin,
And
the boy
I
wonder?
want to point out the Errol Flynn vibe that's really hitting here. The Robin font and like
Yep.
the way that he's bursting on is got a
He's
very
Robin Hood.
It's Robin Hood. Although eventually it was the flying Graysons was the notion was that of course he's a circus performer.
We should call out this wonderful cover text because it tells you a lot about comic book marketing and how much of the things that we get as the staples of comics were established very early. It's 11 issues into there being such a thing as the Batman. The comic book industry is tiny and youthful, and he's being marketed as the sensational character find of 1940. Like,
They were not wrong.
They were like, y'all thought 1939 was the tops in terms of comic book characters.
No.
You don't even know what's coming in 1940.
Happy Boy Wonder, 1940. Da, 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 da. Yeah.
1940 newsreel.
It's very and it's
A little
and it's-
12-year-old boy loses his parents.
So
Benefactor Bruce Wayne takes him in under his wing.
so let's.
Oh, just keep doing it.
No,
Yeah,
I'm kind of
what
enjoying
happened?
the newsy
yeah.
voice.
Dateline 1940. The Flying Graysons at the Haley Circus. Look at them go, folks. Look at them go. Oh no, there goes the rope. And they're down. The Graysons are dead. Oh, but poor Dick, he's mourning his parents. Oh, but there comes benefactor billionaire Bruce Wayne, boy of our town for Gotham City. Looks like he's pulling Dick Grayson into his good graces. Ah, there's Alfred Pennyworth. They're bringing him home. Ah, Bruce Wayne has adopted him. What's that? Bruce Wayne is Batman and Dick Grayson is Robin, and he's using his acrobatics to fight crime and take down Tony Zuko?
Wow, you
We
really
have to
went
do
all the way
this
there.
Forever. We have all character intros must be
Now get a
old-timey
1940s
radio.
old-timey
voice.
Done. It's a fun voice to do, everybody. You should try it at home.
So Bruce Wayne goes to the circus. He sees this very famous flying trapeze act called the Flying Graysons, which is a whole family of trapeze artists, which is actually a thing that exists. They're not the Graysons themselves, but the whole
Yeah.
family
The real
trapezes.
Flying Graysons, yes.
The
Acrobats
circus,
are
the
now
circus
called
itself
Flying
is
Graysons
kind
all
of
the
being
time.
hustled for money by some local thugs.
Protection racket.
Protection
I've
racket.
read so many retellings of this story that I don't trust myself to.
They don't.
I went back and reread the original. It's Zuko hustling them down.
Zuko hustling them
Great,
down,
right in place.
and like they pour acid on the rope or something like really silly. It's like slow working acid that just waits till the carnival begins. And Dick Grayson's parents fall to their death because they do their act without a net.
Look, if you go to the circus in Gotham, sometimes you're going to see a murder.
Yeah, it's just how it's going to go. Bruce Wayne
It happens again with Jason Todd.
adopts Dick Grayson as his ward.
Himself, of course, being an orphan, as you may recall.
And Dick Grayson, of course, also being a circus performer, is an acrobat, is a juggler, and sort of brings this his acrobatic techniques to there's the Flying Graysons.
Oh, beautiful.
And becomes Batman's sidekick and kind of like vents and brings more importantly to the book kind of a sense of fun, which is what saves the book, I think, when the comic code finally comes down upon them. Is kind of the cheerful, happy secondary to Batman's more grim, intense book, and gives it a nice contrast, gives Batman somebody to talk to. Other than just the person on the other side of the book, which is a little weird.
Yeah.
And this relationship continues for many, many years.
Well, and was this an answer to the fact that, like, yes, like you had a lot of GIs overseas reading comic books, like there was a big adult market, but the majority of the market was kids and teens, right? But they were seeing these adults fight crime. So was this like Detective Comics' way of saying, hey, kids, we acknowledge that you're the ones reading it. Look, you could be a hero too. Buy more books.
I think it was like a good mesh of getting everybody to read the book, and it worked.
No,
I mean-
because
I feel
it totally
like there are
worked, but
multiple
yeah.
schools of thought on this. There are some that sort of say, like, the kids are just as happy to read about adults, and then there's others that say, like, kids get really into it if you give them a figure they can identify with.
Yeah.
And so, like, probably elements of both logic prevailed.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, because
but,
I can imagine, like, there's a narrative point to, like, well, if you just bring in another adult, then who's the actual
and at
boss? Like, if there's a younger person there, then Batman immediately has seniority, I guess. Like,
And at the time, dark caped vigilante was a genre. It's
Yeah.
important to remember there were a lot of different, including like the Black Bat. There were I'm like that's the one that comes to mind immediately. It was like varying characters from other publishers. vying to be the big post-Shadow vigilante, which was another character, radio character and comic character was the Shadow. It was very much kind of the original DNA for this idea of putting on a black jacket or black cloak and going out and fighting crime. And Robin brought such a different vibe to it, and a little bit of that Flash Gordon color, and a little there's something, and it's definitely there's something I was always more interested in being Robin as a kid than being Batman.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know if that's it. Well, and to be fair though, that's also because of Tim Drake, but we'll get into Tim Drake.
But you know what? There is something to be said for like, because I think I was always identified more with Robin too. But I think that there's something to be said for like, I'm not an adult. I don't know how to make those decisions. Those kind of decisions are intimidating. So let the adult make the adult decisions. I just get to go and swing from ropes and kick bad guys.
Excuse me.
Like, and maybe every once in a while get like, hey, I got a clue over there, Batman. Like,
no, and it also, I mean, like, and the character shifted quite a bit once the comic code came down, also because.
So what was the comic code?
For those
We're
of you
going to
who
do
don't know,
an episode on this.
we will.
we
eventually.
will. I actually downloaded a couple audiobooks on the history of the comics code, knowing that
we're getting
we're
there.
evenly going to have to do a show on the
man.
comics code.
It's
I read chunks of it for a vlog. It was one of my favorite things I've ever done.
Oh.
Because reading the comics code is a trip.
in an attempt to save themselves from political pressures that were coming down to clean up the comic world, the comic
So
the
it's
comic
the
book
50s.
companies.
There's a widespread, there's a national moral panic about specifically like teens and juvenile delinquency.
Corrupter of youth.
Seduction of the
Seduction of
innocent.
the
Seduction of the Innocent.
So in
Frederick
this
Wortham.
wider, like, people were freaking out in basically every element of 1950s society, but there was one strain that came down particularly heavy on comic books. There was a psychologist by the name of Dr. Frederick Wortham who published a magazine article and then book called Seduction of the Innocent, which laid out this case for all of these like dangerous impulses he thought were represented in comics that were bad for the young mind. And it was a mix of him taking sort of sinister interpretations of stuff which really was for all ages, and then him pointing to material which was decidedly not for all ages, such as the like horror and crime comics. And that they came down on because they said, you know, like 9-year-olds are reading about people with 7 heads and it'll warp their brains. We watched, okay, I'll bring this up when we do the comics code, but we watched this like contemporary 50s scare TV special where they were talking about like how these books might warp kids' minds. But to do that, they had like kid actors reenact the idea of like, what if they read a comic and then they tied their friend to a tree and whatever. And I'm like, are the kids not way more warped by you paying them to pretend to tie their friend to a tree than by anything they could read?
Too far down the ladder. Too far down the ladder.
My mind was blown. Okay, so they freaked out, and comics were in danger of getting shut down by legislative or governmental action. So they were dragged in front of the Senate to sort of to do the
Justify themselves.
what was that
Justify and
called?
defend.
Yeah, like there were Senate hearings, but luckily before it got to the point of legislation, comics voluntarily adopted a code of content, which would be enforced by the Comics Code Authority, which would apply to the major publishers all signed on, and would say like you can't have the bad guys win, you can't have like certain things that.
It was pretty strict.
It was.
And a lot of comic book publishers died because of it. They just all sort of collapsed. And
Or like purchased and absorbed into like kind of the bigger ones and stuff like that.
And, and if you read some of the superhero books, especially the ones that survive, things like Batman, they survived by kind of getting very navel contemplaty, I suppose would be. Batman got Batwoman and got married, and then like there's a whole bunch of like really interesting covers of that era of like Batman and like trying to like it was like a lot of like Batman like trying to date women to make Robin upset. Like
Which doesn't really.
it got very weird.
If the claim, and I believe it was one of the claims made, was that there was something,
there was something between
untoward
them.
in the relationship between Batman and Robin, And it's, of course, like, from the viewpoint of 2017, we're like, we hope some of those characters were gay, but it wouldn't have been Batman and Robin because that's a child.
And like it's,
Yeah.
I looked for it. It ain't there.
Yeah, it's not there.
It's just
Not
ain't there.
The bondage themes in Wonder Woman were there, but that's a separate
That
matter.
was there.
Whole other thing though.
Yeah. No, it was really, and it only really got weird once the comic code hit in, and that's where like some of like the very strange relationships popped up. Dick Grayson was Robin for many years.
So he was Robin from 1940 until...
Oh God, 1980.
He was replaced by Jason Todd, right?
Well, before Jason Todd came around, they kind of, once they started adding continuity, someone started noticing that it stopped being like an 11-year-old in weird short shorts, and it became a 16-year-old in short shorts.
By the 60s, he's starring in a book called Teen Titans.
Teen Titans.
With some of the other sidekick characters.
Yeah.
So he had aged up at least enough to qualify for that.
So he's on his own team.
And he's on his own team.
And this is around the time that the popular perception of him gets crystallized, of course, because I would say, I'm curious about this.
I
Of
think
all
I
the
know what you're gonna
characters
say.
whose interpretation got fixed in the public mind by different incarnations, I would say Robin's characterization got the most fixed in the public mind by the original Batman TV series.
Burt Ward.
Yeah.
Mother effing Ward. And yeah, holy rusted nails Batman.
Yeah,
like
that all came from that show. Yeah.
that was all that. And
The title of our episode, Holy Batman. Holy Robin Batman.
Holy Robin Batman. And that version of Robin really crystallized that character on an odd level.
Yeah.
And not in a bad way, but it's a character. It's like, whereas most people understand, like characters like Batman have had a lot of interpretations by which to sort of pull away from that and like find other footing.
Mm-hmm.
There haven't been a lot of Robins in media other than that Robin. That was like Burt Ward's Robin was a real.
Because there's 1.5 live-action Robins since then, right?
Yeah. And
Depending if you count Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
which it's a little iffy. But that Robin also.
Chris O'Donnell.
He's the one.
O'Donnell.
He's the other one.
Right?
Yeah.
But that Robin was a bit of a sex symbol.
To whom?
No, to people like. So, hear me out. I'm going somewhere.
No. I want to be on whatever forums you're talking about.
The Batman live action show was. I mean, it was one of those shows like Knight Rider where it was for kids, but teenagers and adults were watching it too, and it had a very unusual aesthetic, and it was a weirdly counterculture, like in a time where television wasn't particularly counterculture. There were things happening in that show that were not seen anywhere else on television. Like Batman was sort of portrayed as this parental, responsible adult who was also at the same time not one of the other adults. He was the adult that dressed up like Batman. So like Gordon and like all the real adults were trying to be serious. And then when Batman there was one of the episodes I love is where all the hippies are being kidnapped. And the adults are like, oh, they're just hippies. They're getting high and going off with their flowers. And Batman's like, no, these cool kids may talk some weird jive, but I understand that they're definitely into some serious stuff, and they're not as crazy as you think. And like, they're really like, their whole thing of like, I may be an adult, but I'm here to like, I'm taking you seriously was, I know it seems silly now, but at the time that was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Like the notion of like.
At a time when all authority figures were aligned sort of against.
There was a real polarization.
These sort of forces that Batman would be like, not a square, kind of dig it.
Yeah, he was not counterculture necessarily, but he wasn't culture either. He was this sort of like
He was a bridge.
He was this interesting bridge,
like,
and
like,
Robin.
I'm a serious adult, but I also validate their viewpoints and see where they're necessary and important.
And Robin was sort of his bridge to youth culture, and I mean, like you talk about this, but like there are stories about those two actors going to like intense, oversexed Hollywood parties and just for their own amusement not breaking character. Like just categorically refusing and just slowly driving people mad. And I find that, and like, it's brilliant. So there's this interesting thing.
The answer to whom is to real people.
Well, now
who met him.
to real people.
Like,
and,
oh.
Well, they're also we have Dick Grayson now Dick Grayson is now a sex symbol.
I have never connected those facts.
This was the interesting thing is it's the kid you knew at 13 who's now hot at 21. Like
That's
it's that
weird.
whole weird
Yeah.
push.
because now he's Nightwing and he's got that booty.
He's Dawson's Creek now. It's all fucking happening. I know. I'm getting weird.
So
All the Nightwing booty.
the first thing that happens is the Teen Titans go from being just a side character thing to getting like a big relaunch as the new Teen Titans in the early 80s.
Early 80s.
And one of them is Dick Grayson, a.k.a.
As
Robin. And then at a certain point in that series, as they were starting to take that book really seriously in its own internal continuity, and people were like struggling with their role, like moving into adulthood, essentially, he decides it's time to stop being Robin.
Yep. And he takes the name Nightwing, and I should have thought to put it up today because I have the issue.
Where he takes the name, and it's
No, I don't have the issue where he takes the name. I have the issue where we get the name from. Which is
how it's from Superman or something like that.
Superman, which is that there's a superhero on Krypton from when Superman was a kid called Nightwing, was one of like the Kryptonese superheroes. And so Nightwing takes, Dick Grayson takes the Nightwing name from Superman and sort of starts to try and create his own less intense, broody, Yarg, my parents are dead, a version of the Batman
Do we
model.
have a picture of the first Nightwing outfit?
I hope we do.
with the spangles.
With the spangles.
I bet Chief can find one.
I bet Chief can find a
that-
spangly
that
with the gold
V-neck?
spangle, the V-neck.
In the Teen Titans, when he was in the Teen Titans as
The
Nightwing.
new Teen Titans,
The new Teen Titans.
Nightwing. I'm just curious. I should think to load these things up if I know I'm going to want to call them out on the
I
stream.
didn't even think about throwing a lot of Nightwing stuff.
A couple quick.
there it is.
There we go. Look at that thing. That is. I mean, like, that was a Robin, and now that's
Nothing
obviously
says take me seriously like that outfit.
that says sex symbol to me. Like that's selling sex to me. I feel it.
So around what year is that? Is that like 81 or is that in the 70s? Is that late 70s or early 80s?
It's going to be early 80s because
I think it's
the
early
new
80s,
Teen
right?
Titans
Yeah.
starts in the early 80s, but
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know
what
how
I
far
thought.
into the 80s we are exactly. I'm going to guess like 83.
Yeah, I was thinking like 82, 83.
Just because
Yeah.
there's a couple questions I want to pop in really quickly,
Yes.
just on the comics code. Why did it take so long for comic publishers to occasionally go without the code seal from Half a Ring Circus? Honestly, because of distribution issues.
Yeah. If
What-
you wanted to be carried on a newsstand, you needed to have that symbol. And for a long, long time,
You
that
could make
was
a
just
comic
the
book
case.
without it, and then they would just no one would carry it.
Though the story that I love, like I did a lot of research on this for our Spider-Man episode last week and then forgot to talk about it, was that Stan Lee and, oh God, what Spider-Man was it? Like late 90s Spider-Man, like 97, 98, something like
It's
that.
around issue 98.
I think so, yeah. Went without the
96
comics
to
code
98?
because he was asked by
The issues,
like,
not the years.
yeah, this is like mid 70s, I want to say, like mid to late 70s, I think.
Early 70s,
Or-
maybe late 60s.
is it early? Okay.
Because we're at 121, remember, by the time Gwen Stacy happens.
Oh yeah, yeah. So yeah. Anyway, look at us all dreaming.
Circa 1970-ish.
He's approached Stan Lee to answer this, maybe a little bit more of this question. He's approached by a department of the U.S. government saying, "Hey, kids love Spider-Man. Could you do an anti-drug issue?" And he was like, "Of course, I would love to." So he writes it, they draw it, they ink it. It's colored, it's wonderful. They give it off to the
Won't pass
comics
code.
code, and they're like, "Now you talked about drugs," and he's like, "No, but it's against drugs. Like we're literally showing the bad thing against drugs. It's a Green Goblin story. Harry Osborn's hooked on drugs. Spider-Man saves another kid as he falls off a ledge, and he's just like tripping his balls off, and he's like, 'I've got you, chum,' and he like puts him down, and it's a 3-issue run." That's all anti-drug and how like drugs are bad and we've got to get Harry Osborn off drugs, get him to the hospital. This is ruining his life.
It's a good book.
It's a great story. And the Green Goblin like comes back, his amnesia leaves, and like he's attacking Spider-Man, but he doesn't know why. It's a great comic. And the comic code is like, "Man, these three you can't do." And Stan Lee was like, "But another department in the U.S. government asked us to do
Literally
this."
teamed up with, like, the
And they
Department of Health
said,
or whatever.
"Yeah, but it's against the code." And he's like, "It kind of isn't. Like, not really." And they're like,
not.
"No, but we interpret it as it is." So he's like, "Screw you guys, I'm going to run with it anyway." And sales didn't drop. Actually, the comic did really, really well. And then every other publisher was like, "Oh."
It started to get interesting.
They didn't officially drop it until like 2011 or something
Yeah,
like that.
sure.
But in the 80s and 90s, the standards, even with things carrying the code symbol, loosened up considerably.
Yeah.
For better and for worse.
The last code question, just before we go on, is how did magazines like Mad get away with stuff like this?
was that a leading question? Because remember when we said publishers folded? The most notable one to really get hit by the Comics Code was EC, Entertaining Comics, with legendary editor Bill Gaines. I have a T-shirt that says Bill Gaines was right, which is why I'm checking my stomach for his name.
I wasn't going to ask.
Because you're always
Bill
wearing
Gaines.
it.
I was just imagining you had it like tattooed and like very,
Yeah.
You have
very
a
comfortable.
tattoo like of Bill Gaines'
Gaines'
face
life.
on your belly. Yeah.
Bill Gaines.
Not weird at all. He had at the time the basically most storied writers and artists like working anywhere, doing the most interesting creative work, and also some like schlocky buck turning work because you get a range of stuff. But he got dragged very heavily in front of things like they came down almost specifically at some of his books where they were like, you can't have the word crime in large letters. He had a book called Crime Suspense Stories. Anyway, he was basically personally attacked by this, but he was also publishing an upstart humor comic called Mad. But when the Comics Code Authority came into being and you needed that stamp to put your comics on a magazine rack, EC was like, okay, cool. Mad's not a comic.
Nope.
It's a magazine.
It's a magazine.
Nobody said
Mad
anything about
magazine.
magazines.
No one said nothing.
It switched formats. It got bigger. It kept publishing and continues to this day as basically the sole survivor of the EC years because they were just like,
Yep.
we're not having it.
They were wise enough to know
We're totally a magazine. What are you guys talking about? You don't have a magazine
Take it
code.
away.
Yeah, it's totally different.
So moving back onto Dick Grayson, now that we've taken our segue.
On to Dick Grayson.
So he becomes Nightwing.
I know you're trying.
Can you do an 80s newsreel about him becoming Nightwing?
Can you do Max Headroom? Never mind.
Oh,
Carry on.
Yeah,
No.
you don't want to watch
No,
me
that's-
spaz like
that's
Nightwing. Listen, Dick Grayson.
Do
It was
it.
worth it.
No, I just tried.
No, it was
You
great.
were doing
It was
it.
great. It was great.
But now I feel stupid.
No, carry on. You were going on.
I love that, he made the decision to not be Robin, and that stayed.
Yeah.
Like in comics, so oftentimes things don't stay.
Yeah.
Like even Gwen Stacy, as of a couple years ago, not really back. Like Peter Parker's still like, oh, that's the worst. But she's kind of back. So it's very rare that things.
It's the toy.
She's not back, but
it's
they've
the
got
toy
her-
box theory.
Yeah.
I like the toy. The toy box theory is like when you're given a book like, let's say, Spider-Man. You get all the toys and you play with them and you make them do crazy, crazy stuff. And you put Dr. Octopus in Spider-Man's costume in Spider-Man's body and you make him do stuff. And then Dr. Octopus becomes a different character. But then when you're like, all right, I've done my 25 issues, I'm leaving. You put all the toys back in the toy box and you kind of bring everything back to zero or to at least 98%. You put almost everything away, and anything that you leave outside the toy box, you have a conversation with the next kid who gets to play with the toys. And so these kind of changes, while they'll happen temporarily, there's drastic movements left, right, and otherwise in books over the short term. Long-term change is rare and usually requires layers of cement to be poured upon it.
Yeah.
And the thing that ended up making Nightwing stick was that people love Nightwing.
Yeah.
Nightwing was a huge hit, and
Huge hit.
the Teen Titans was a huge hit.
Yeah.
And then
There was at the time, New Teen Titans and Uncanny X-Men were battling it out for #1 for
Yeah.
basically years.
Yeah.
And nice, good entrance shot of the newly not nearly adult-ish Dick Grayson. It's like latter-day teens, early young adult. I don't know exactly how old they were. Donna Troy got married, so they have to be grown-ups.
Yeah.
But they're still the New Teen Titans.
Yeah. They're 21. That's what I said. They were like
youths. They're youths.
they're juniors in college. That's
Yeah.
kind of how I always
Yeah.
saw it.
there's and Nightwing has become a very weird symbol of sort of. How do you even describe where Nightwing sits in the fandom pantheon at this point, other than the fact that they're making a wonderfully over-sexualized action figure of him, which is really kind of
awesome.
kind of brilliant. I know it's definitely it sums
that
up
booty.
a weird. Yeah, I know that's the booty. It's the booty figure.
It's a running fandom joke, which is, depending on who you ask, kind of important or just a fun joke or somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle.
Which is that Nightwing is kind of a sex symbol and he has a nice butt. And a lot of artists are like, look at his great butt. And it's partly that little bit of revenge of if comics are going to be just TNA for 30 years since the late 80s. Like this is the one for the people batting for other teams.
Yeah.
And so it's just one of.
Yeah,
Thank you. Wow.
There we
that
go.
was
Right there.
fast.
But like, of course, it's drawn. Like every butt in comics on a certain level is sort of just up to the
No, but
interpretation
mostly the
of the.
female butts and him.
Oh yeah, but like
It's
there
not
we are.
every butt in comics.
It doesn't
That's
have
why
to
we
be,
notice.
but there it is. Yeah, it's just there.
That's a good butt.
That was like a
Nightwing's
George
got a
Michael's
good butt.
There was a lot happening.
Yeah. George Michael.
But I think that there's something that's not. There's a non-coincidental relationship, I think, between folks like younger comics readers, and by younger I mean in the last 30 years, I guess, attaching to this version of Dick Grayson. Chief notes, it's very, very easy to find a Nightwing butt pic. Thanks, Google.
Good work, Chief.
See if you can find the figure.
Yeah, just make your search history really weird.
Kotobukiya.
Yeah.
So I think there's something non-coincidental about like him going out on his own and having new meaning as like for a rising generation of comic book readers to attach to him in a sort of specific way, like him embracing his own being a grown-up and them sort of attaching to him as a symbol that departed from like other ways of doing things. I don't think that's a coincidence.
No, I would agree.
Well, and I think that there's an element of like he's Batman. He's got the staple of Batman. He's been raised with Batman. We like for 40 years we've known him to be with Batman, and now he's just now striking out on his own. So he is still Batman, but he's a twist on Batman. He's a kind of like a choice. It's like you can read Batman and get grim, dark vengeance. My parents were killed, and I'll never let that happen again. Or you can read Dick Grayson, who's like, my parents were killed, but I've still got to give hope to the people, and I'm going to go do this because it's the right thing to do. And it's just like, all right, well, they're both essentially doing the same thing, and they both essentially have the same set of skills.
But the difference between them is that Batman raised Nightwing. Like Batman didn't have a Batman to raise him.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that sort of shapes
so like
their
you kind
choices.
And in a way, you get kind of a success of Batman. Like it's like, oh, that's a good thing that Batman has done by putting this very well-adjusted individual into crime fighting.
Yeah, I'll actually say if there's any really big differences is that Nightwing is not supernaturally unhealthy. Like part of Batman's superpower is that he is not a functional human being on any level.
Yeah.
But somehow managed to raise a remarkably functional human being.
Good job, Alfred.
Good job, Alfred. That's credit where credit's due.
Yeah.
But it was also, I mean, it was a character that brought a lot of light and a lot of youth and a lot of silliness to the Batman mythos. So once there was a vacuum there.
So he goes off to be Nightwing and basically try to find out what it means to have his own adult identity after like what we know is 40-odd years as Robin, but for him was like his whole childhood. Once he decides to put that away and try to adopt a new identity, it totally works. He's now been Nightwing for most of the past 30-odd years.
Yep.
Can we just say how crazy that is?
There's the butt figure. So
I love that he's like, shh, don't tell anyone about my butt.
Don't tell anyone.
That's what he's saying. Taliesin.
Oh my God.
Okay, that's too much. Too much.
Don't tell anyone about my
that
butt.
was too
Taliesin.
much.
Shh.
I was really enjoying watching crowds of people come find that at Comic-Con and be like, ooh. Yeah, it was really kind of fantastic. There was like little tourist groups that are going by.
So, but there is something interesting that like he's been Nightwing almost as long as he was Robin.
Which is crazy.
Which is
And he's taken a couple of vacations
really cool.
and done other
Yeah,
things.
we'll get
He was-
into.
Yeah,
Sure.
we'll get into all that. But so what happened once we didn't have a Robin?
We had a vacuum, and Batman, like any character like that, a character that's that grim and that solemn, you got to give them someone to talk to. There's a reason. Again, it's the Chewbacca.
Yeah.
Is that there's nothing more boring than a character that doesn't want to talk to anybody. And there's nothing. You don't want to watch someone sit around doing things and not talking. You have to have some sort of interplay so that you get any access to an inner monologue of any kind or any commentary on what's going on. So, Jason Todd. So let's talk about stealing hubcaps.
So successful, well-adjusted kid, Jason Todd.
Here's something I didn't know. Doing research on this, there's a pre-crisis Jason Todd.
Yep.
I had no idea. I always just assumed Jason Todd was a kid who was stealing hubcaps. And one of my favorites, and Chief, I put this in there, the pictures that I gave you, he calls Batman a big boob. Like in his first
I need to see this.
his first interaction with Batman, he's stealing his
Try and
hubcaps.
catch me, you big boob.
And I'm
Yes.
like,
Why is he dressed like the Scarlet Spider?
What
that
an
is
edgy
another.
kid he is.
Just
He's so
never-
edgy.
right.
Oh God, he's
I love it. And then,
such
like,
an edgelord.
Batman
so
Batman
edgy.
chases him down and he's like, "Oh, great, you found me. Here's your stupid tires. Get out of here, Bats."
He did smoke cigarettes too,
yeah, he
didn't
smoked
he? He was a
cigarettes.
cigarette
He's like
smoking.
a 12-year-old, just like little punk.
Speaking of
was-
juvenile
yeah.
delinquency, Jason Todd.
Jason Todd was an actual juvenile delinquent.
Yeah.
He was trying to steal the hubcaps off the Batmobile. Oh my! And this is the Robin we get. Is that it's kind of like the problem with this now is it's almost a doubling down. Is you've got broody and you've got like
Super broody.
jerk face. Yeah, he's not even broody.
kinda, like,
he's just
punk.
mean.
He's kind of a mean.
And you can see where
punk.
they were trying to say, like, what would make this kid different from, like, everybody knows Dick Grayson is kind of the good student and the loyal ward, and, like, he may have grown up into, like, an interesting and sophisticated sort of teenage character, but if you're trying to draw a contrast in your Robins, they were like, what about this kid with a bad attitude?
bad attitude.
I'll admit also I think I blame Watchmen a little bit for this. I think he's another product of the Watchmen era.
Well, this is definitely
What
What would
year
a
is
real
this? What year is
kid be
this?
like if
Yeah.
you were?
What's
yeah,
that?
what year is this?
This is I want to say is 84.
Okay.
Ish. So it's
How
it's
long
post. This
between
origin
Nightwing
is
and-
post crisis.
So, what,
so-
did he
and
not
that
do
was
the
84,
hubcaps thing
85.
when he first showed up?
He was an acrobat in a circus, and he watched his parents die. And Dick Grayson was in the audience and was like, "Oh no, I've been there before."
How very Wally West.
So he takes Dick Grayson home, like to the Wayne Manor. Bruce and Dick both kind of adopt him as another ward. It's the exact same story. So when Crisis happens, the writers are all like, you know what's kind of a little bit of a stretch? That same story happened twice to two different Robins. Is Batman just collecting kids who, like, Batman should just go to the
I think-
circus?
whole
I think
deal,
Batman's just
Jason?
killing off families of acrobats.
They post Crisis completely retcon Jason
So
Todd's
they just
origin.
introduce him again for the first time after Crisis?
Yeah, completely
With the
reintroduce him.
hubcaps.
And
had
yeah, because there he
Yeah.
is. There he is.
The Todds.
It's at the, let's see, Killer Croc kills his parents.
Right.
And I think it's because they fall and he witnesses it. And he's like, you don't understand what this is like. And Dick Grayson's like,
I really did.
I
You'd be
legitimately
surprised.
100% know exactly what you're going through. That was Batman 366.
Batman 366.
No.
Wow, there's a lot.
Batman
there's some
366
great
is where
comments
he
coming
first
but we'll
came
get
in
into
as
these.
Robin. This was Batman 40 something.
Jace, yeah.
Batman 340.
It took him 2 years to go from losing his parents to showing up as Robin?
I think so.
Like-
I forgot to
I
write
should
down
have
that
looked
issue
at
number.
that timeline. I've looked all this stuff up and then forgotten it, I
So
guess.
Jason swears, Jason smokes cigarettes, Jason steals,
the
and yes,
Jason-
apparently there are hubcaps on a
Post-crisis
Batmobile.
Jason is the one that matters
Yeah.
in this particular, because that one didn't exist for too long.
So this is where I came into the picture. Was I read the Death in the Family graphic novel?
So, funny story, the audience hated him.
Yeah.
They were like, Jason Todd,
him.
meh, Robin's not a
So-
title, it's Dick Grayson. You're not the real Robin. I guess they hated both versions of him?
well, here's the interesting
No,
thing.
I think that they liked the first version of him just fine,
Carbon copy, Jason?
but he was a carbon copy, and I feel like maybe some of the audience was like, well, we've already kind of seen this Robin, but I don't think they were complaining. I think it was more of a writers and editors thing, like, you know what we've just done? This anti-monitor just reset our entire universe, so this is a bit too convenient, let's change it and see if we can get something different.
So one of the first graphic novels I ever read was Death in the Family. Was
telling me
the
this
Jason
today.
Todd?
I
I know. I
love
was
this.
just telling this to you at Starbucks.
Spoilers.
Spoilers. And
By the way, huge spoilers on this one if you don't know this story.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like it all gets undone anyway. But Jason, they did a thing where they made a 1-800 number. It wasn't a 1-900 number because
number,
they
yeah.
charged you for it.
Yeah.
Yep.
You had to pay money. You could give them money to vote on whether or not Jason Todd lived or died.
In this particular
They
storyline.
set up a
storyline.
storyline which would end with a sort of big cliffhanger that you theoretically could vote,
Like $2 a phone call.
something like that, to see whether
And they had
kid would live or die.
And they had two endings. They had they had Jason Todd living and Jason Todd dying. And from what I
drew
remember
both.
reading was that they were not expecting. They were expecting people to vote for him to live. They were not expecting it to go the way it did.
The 80s were a rough time, fans. What were you doing?
Jeez.
And
There are a lot of urban legends about this.
there are a lot.
It sounded like you said there's a lot of religions about this.
A lot of religions about Jason Todd.
I was like, are there, Amy? Please tell me.
The third Church of Todd is actually I have a tattoo. No.
You started that one.
Yeah.
Along with all your other
Praise to
cults.
the Red Hood.
There are a lot of that sounds really plausible.
I know.
There are a lot of urban legends about this. A nice, good picture. You can prevent it with a telephone call. Joker fails, Robin lives, Joker succeeds, whatever the rest of that text is.
And I love that it's
Japan Rose, we are going to get to your
666.
question, by the way. So yes, I see it as a great question.
Yeah. So some urban
many
legends say that this vote was very, very close. And some
say
also say
no.
that somebody with a very early auto dialer
Yes. Dropped cash.
Oh my God.
designed
really?
this in the 80s. You could game phone
that's
systems in a particular way where they
super
just
funny.
set something up to call over and over
back
and
when there was
over.
a thing called phone freaking. Oh wow, I'm about to date myself. Do you remember phone freaking? I had a little black
don't.
box.
It's like hacking, but for like payphones.
Yeah, figuring out
Oh
ways of
my
like fucking with
God.
phone. Yeah, that's right. I can swear. This is the internet.
Yeah.
There were like things like older style payphones. You could actually like record the sounds of coins going in them and actually like get them to like give you free like. And there were like other ways. Like there was a whole community of people back then who were really into like messing
Hacking
with the phone company.
payphones?
Any of the phone or like your home, like especially back when you had to go through your phone line for your modem and.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Now, the version I heard didn't specify whether the person using the auto dialer was paying for all those votes or just cheating
Or
the
just
system.
cheating the system.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Do you
Well,
know?
I think they're both. There's like so many versions of this. Is a big urban legend.
Did you call in?
I know because I didn't know. I wasn't a reader at the time. I was given the graphic novel and reading it. I was like, he had to die. Like I was like, I understood from a story point, and I was that kid where I'm like, from a story point, this is not a sustainable Robin. This is not a sustainable character. You can't keep like all you're going to lead to with a character like this is doubling down and tripling down, and you're going to get a Speedy. You're basically who's another sidekick. Which is like the only way this ends is with Robin on heroin, and I don't want to read that story. And we had that with
Speedy.
with Green Arrow's sidekick Speedy. I'm like, that's where they were going with Jason.
By the
Todd.
way, when
those two have a book together now.
They do. What we're referencing with Speedy is there's a very famous, and this is post the Comics
Spider-Man
Code, the
storyline.
Spider-Man thing. DC was like, wait, we can do that too? Okay, cool. So Green Arrow, Green Lantern, Speedy has a heroin addiction, and there's a really famous cover of that comic where he's like, my ward is a junkie? Yeah. And it's Green Arrow, and he's like, oh no, Speedy.
We should do an ep just on that run at some point.
I will.
Because
Yeah, happily.
there we go. Good with the cover. If you can skim down to see the arm, it's
dark.
These two characters had a really interesting dynamic. Green Lantern was, when you talk about those authority figures who were not into hippies and their nonsense, that was very much how they wrote Green Lantern. And
Yeah.
Green Arrow was sort of like hip and socially aware and really emphasizing some of these issues. And so that storyline was playing out specifically the tension of Green Lantern being like, look, while you're out trying to save the world, here's what's happening to the people you care about that you're neglecting.
It was
heartbreaking. Like,
it was a fascinating friendship, and that was a really interesting chapter in that friendship of the Green Lantern, Green Arrow, kind of left-leaning, right-leaning.
it was interesting because it was a team up, but it was a team up of people with
Brave and the
different
Bold?
views.
Was that under Brave and the Bold?
It was just
that
straight
was-
up Green
that
Lantern,
was
Green
straight
Arrow.
Green Arrow, yeah.
The Green Lantern shared his book for a while with them. But so Speedy.
Speedy has a heroin problem, and you had narrative points when you were 12.
Well, you're only because I was that kid.
You were not a normal child.
No, I was.
You've grown into a very normal adult.
I'm exactly the same as the problem. I was a really weird 12-year-old, and I'm a slightly slow 40-year-old. It's just been a slow descent.
You were precocious and then you just stayed.
Extremely precocious.
Nice.
There's
Word,
proof.
yes.
There is so much proof.
But you were the kid who was like, he has to die or he becomes a heroin junkie, and who cares?
It ends poorly either now or later, and I
Yeah.
want it to end now because it's just gonna the story's just gonna. It's not gonna be a superhero story. It's gonna be this like intense, overbearing thing, which you can do in Green Arrow, but like Batman doesn't survive that well in my opinion, and you need something a little lighter to make Batman work. And thank God for Tim motherfucking Drake. Because I was in boarding school when that
very
hit,
cold
and I
in
was
his
like,
grave.
this is what we need. I was so excited.
This is the Robin we deserve.
This is the Robin we need. This is the Robin.
So it's what, the late 80s now? Jason Todd only made it a couple years.
No, this was, let's see, 77, This is early 90s,
Early
maybe?
90s?
I feel like we need to touch on Jason Todd just for another half second, please.
I was a
freshman. I was a
but,
freshman in high school.
Let's see.
With
I'm gonna look up the
Jason
timing
Todd.
on Tim Drake.
With Timmy.
You
So,
talk about Jason.
Death in the Family, you should read it. It's one of those like DC essential classic kind of like story runs, in my opinion.
I
It's
swear
not.
when you go back and read that, it does seem like he was supposed to live. They give
Oh,
it
yeah.
so much other stuff with his mom and other
Yeah.
like
Lady
that. Like
Shiva
that story
and-
would end normally if he lived. It's just like, oh, and it takes a turn.
Yeah, that is
right
like
at the
that's
end.
like Death of Gwen Stacy level like influence on the mythos of Batman and a lot of the stories that come afterwards. And even like I was just reading like Battle for the Cowl and stuff like that. That whole story is still playing into that, and that was like 5 years ago. You know, so like Death in the Family is a very important read. Definitely read it.
For the record, I'm just going to throw this out there as a, like, it's going to sound more confusing than I'm saying this. But what you're looking for is a graphic novel or a collected paperback, usually with a black cover and the shapes on the front of just Batman holding Robin. It's called Batman, A Death in the Family.
Yeah.
And I'm being really specific about those words because comics love to revisit in ways that make things confusing.
Deaths in the
So
Family.
if you buy Batman, Death of the Family, you are buying a Scott Snyder written, Greg Capullo drawn graphic novel representing volume 3 of the 2011 Batman run. It's a good story, but it's not the one you're trying to buy.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry on behalf of comics. We don't
we
know
go.
how to stop this kind of thing from happening.
There we go.
But that's the one you're looking for.
That's the one you're looking
That was
for.
the book I read. That was the book I read. It was a rough read.
Oof,
It is violent. It is mean.
It is.
And it
is.
forever cemented the crowbar as a symbol of the Joker in a very dark, weird way.
Yeah.
In ways that are interesting.
Very.
Because
It is
either
very
way, he was
brutal
going
and
to be very
visceral,
badly
yeah.
injured, but if he lived, he was just going to be badly
That's
injured.
thirsty work.
Yeah.
So Timmy,
So Tim Drake.
Tim Drake.
1989.
89. Okay, there
Is
we
Death
are.
in the Family?
No, it's Tim Drake.
Oh, Tim Drake. Tim Drake.
So enter Tim Drake.
Oh, Death in the Family also 88 to 89. Yeah. January of 89. So like.
They did not wait any time.
They were
it
like-
was
they were like, "We
August
need a
of
Robin."
89, and they were like, well, we've been without a Robin for 7 months. We can't handle it.
President of the Sherlock Holmes Society at his school. He's a nerd. He's not the chipper, bright, shining star of Dick Grayson, but he's not. He's a good kid.
Mm-hmm.
He's popular. He's smart. He's a detective. He's a
Like a junior detective.
junior detective.
Warriors.
No.
Warlocks and Warriors.
Okay, I threw this
He's a
in
D&D player.
like very much for the Critical
yeah.
Role
Oh,
team.
yeah.
In Robin, so Tim Drake is now Robin. Batman is out of town. He's down south, tracing down drug lords or something like that in San Mateo, I think, or something along those lines. And he leaves Robin like the keys to Gotham, essentially. And he says, "Well, I'm gone. You watch Gotham for me. This is your first duty as Robin." He's like, "Cool, Batman, cool." And what should happen? The Joker breaks loose.
Oh,
So you get Joker's Wild. It's Robin 2, Joker's Wild. It's only 4 issues, and it's.
Oh yeah.
was that one of his second solo series? Is that where it's called Robin 2?
I don't actually know. I think it's Robin II, so Roman
wait,
numerals
is it 'cause he's-
2.
Were they
Maybe
numbering
the
the
second
Robins?
Robin? I don't know. I don't
Because
know.
he's Robin 3.
Maybe-
Robin
That's
miniseries.
confusing.
I know it's so confusing.
But it was Robin Joker's Wild. If you just look up Robin Joker's Wild,
Look
you'll
at
find
that.
it. God, I love the art in this series.
I'll also
It's
say
so
this was the
good.
first serious redesign of the Robin suit, and it blew my mind.
Yeah. This is the first time Robin has pants.
They gave him pants. They gave him tabby ninja boots. They gave him the black
Women are
outer
still making
cape.
her pants.
They gave him the big fat belt, and they gave him the throwing star R.
Yeah. I actually like that more than the batarang. Like I think
Throwing
that's
star
cool.
R
Yeah, I
was really
like that a
that he
lot.
could just pull off and.
I think
King.
we should, as we get into his tenure as Robin, which is for a whole generation of comic readers,
yeah.
sort of the definitive tenure. You should maybe finish the rundown on like the things that made Tim Drake different as a Robin, which is that he's the first of the Robins to be apprenticing. Like the other Robins are apprenticing under the superhero. Like Tim Drake is apprenticing under the world's greatest detective.
Yes, he is such a good detective. He's just a kid at school, who is such a good detective that he figures out that Bruce Wayne is Batman.
Well, I think he was in the audience the
Yeah.
night that the Graysons died.
Yeah,
So
as a
he
little
was
kid.
he was able to put together. Wait, so they died.
Left an impression. He put it all
He's
together.
a ward. Batman runs around with an Like he starts putting it together.
And then sat on it for years. He was like, I figured out who Batman was. Cool. And just went about his life until Jason Todd died. And he literally just basically goes to Wayne Manor. He's like, you don't know me, but you've got a problem, which is that you need someone to keep you in check because you're starting to go crazy. I know you're Batman. Just shut up about it. You need some help. And I'm here to, and like, out of nowhere, this kid just shows up and is like, you're having a nervous breakdown. You need someone to keep you in check. It is amazing.
And of course, if I'm remembering right, Batman is kind of like, I am at my exact least interested in having a kid here because I just literally had a kid die on me.
In my arms,
and I'm real worried about all my decisions. And Tim is like, too bad, you need a Robin.
And Tim's whole thing is Batman needs a Robin. And Tim comes in and he's like, you do not function well without one, and that's what I'm going to. And he goes and he like trains as a martial artist. He's never the best martial artist, and they make a point of that, and I like that. That he's solid, but not amazing.
He's a thinker. He's a tactician. He's good with strategy. He's a detective. He's a scientist. Yeah.
Dick Grayson is not the world's greatest detective. Tim Drake is going to be the world's greatest detective.
Yeah.
He's a young Sherlock Holmes, but he's also charming. He's well adjusted. I mean, like, he's the guy you want to know. He's the kid you want to hang out with.
And he's from an orphanage, right? What's the status of his parents?
His parents are alive. His parents are fine. They're on vacation when all this is going down, and he's just like, I'm just gonna, while I'm home, like watching the apartment, I'm gonna. His parents, sadly, it's comic books, don't survive super long. Poor dad. That's a whole nother story.
Wait, does his dad?
Captain Boomerang.
But does Captain Boomerang kill him in Identity Crisis?
Yeah, that's later though.
That's right. Yeah.
But Tim's kind of got a life outside of. He doesn't get adopted. He's got a life outside of Bruce and Batman and all that, and he's doing things and going to school and having relationships and this is a fun character to watch because he understands. The thing that makes Tim great is he understands exactly what he's doing there. It's not like Dick Grayson where it's just where it's just alchemical. And it's not where Jason, where it's just doubling down on the grim and inappropriate. This is a character who understands that his job is to keep Batman on the straight and narrow. And it's a great relationship for decades. I mean, like,
and he's the first Robin to get his own ongoing comic series.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, as Robin, because like Dick Grayson gets Nightwing,
but
Robin is Tim Drake. Yeah.
And we get to see him eventually in the animated series. We get Dick Grayson and Tim Drake in the animated series. He's the Robin that most people who are like fans of the Teen Titans, book of the modern Teen Titans, know Tim Drake. He is a kind of what people think of as the modern Robin at this point.
Yeah.
Although he eventually also graduates because they love graduating people.
And that happens, circa 2010,
when he graduates to Red Robin?
Red Robin.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Between 2006 and 2010.
Because he has Robin, and that's what like Joker's Wallet is and stuff like that. That's early 90s. Then in the 2000s, he gets Red Robin. And that's, I believe, after Batman dies, Dick Grayson takes over as Batman.
There's
right. Is that's all around that time?
It's a little before that.
It's just before, I think. But
it is because
as Red Robin though. Because he has Robin, but does he take on the title of the mantle of Red Robin after that?
2009, Red Robin cameo appearance in Robin issue 181
That's the
in
future
February
Robin.
2009. Full appearance, Red Robin #1, August 2009.
So it's early because of Stephanie Brown. Because we have the Stephanie Brown Robin before we have the Dick Grayson Batman.
So, but that's more of a pause. That's not when he moves to being Red Robin, though, right? There's a few years in between there.
There's some weird. It's a little it's DC
he spends
Comics.
roughly 20 years as Robin, which again is a pretty sizable tenure
insane.
and a lot more than Jason got.
So insane.
In the meantime, we have the. Have we made it to the next person who we count, but not everybody does because this may or may not still have happened?
Spoilers. No, spoilers. It's really spoilers. So let's talk about spoilers.
Stop.
That is the joke I have been waiting my life to make.
God, I wish that,
That will be
I had a
not funny to all of you in like 30 seconds. I know. By the way, of course, we're going to be doing topics at the end of this episode. So if anybody would like to submit a topic,
Start pitching us your 5 minutes. We're having so much fun with these.
In the chat room.
Yeah, and the 5 minutes, again, remind me, does it need to be on topic for Robin, or can it be, it can be anything, right?
Anything at all.
Anything. So
Anything
any
at all.
question, like we've done, who would be the worst roommate, stuff like that. So ask away.
Stephanie Brown, who the much maligned, the only in continuity female Robin.
Steph Brown.
The only in continuity one. There's a couple out of continuity.
Until the We Are Robins.
Until the We Are
kind of
Robins,
don't count.
which who don't quite count yet.
We'll see.
We'll see. Steph was a superhero called the Spoiler.
That's the joke.
That's the boy, which was a great costume. One of my favorite costumes growing. I was a
Like
big
the
fan.
purple mask,
It was a blue mask with
This
a purple
is a beautiful
hood.
picture.
There we are.
That's
Well,
not spoiler,
that's
that's-
not spoiler. That's her as Robin, which is.
But that's still Stephanie Brown.
Still Stephanie Brown.
Still Stephanie Brown.
So DC, we've talked about this a bit more in the overall episode, when we tried to cram all of DC history into one episode.
That was a fun one.
We talked about sort of getting carried away with the dark and gritty stuff.
Yep.
And that sometimes you get some of your best and most interesting stuff, and you also get stuff that just causes you to re-examine your priorities. And so what's interesting here is that I met Steph sort of post a lot of this. My first real experience with her is when she's back, and she's Batgirl, and I filled in all those gaps, which means I have a lot of affection for her, but I also didn't have to live through all of this stuff that happened to Stephanie during dark and gritty DC. What are some things that happened to
I'm
Stephanie
not
Brown?
familiar with any of this.
Stephanie Brown, among other things, got knocked up and had to give a baby away. Stephanie Brown was basically wasn't she strangled to near death or by
was this in the Batman?
She was tortured
like
by
in,
Black
was this
Mask
in
for
Batman comics?
She was actually killed
okay.
by
She
him until they
technically
decided
killed
that she had
the-
it.
yeah.
So she was a supporting character in Batman and Robin, the two relative books. She sort of had a superhero identity as Spoiler. Her dad is a supervillain.
The Clue Master?
Clue Master.
Yeah.
She started an on again, off again. There we go. There's the Spoiler costume.
The spoiler costume. God, I love that thing.
She basically had an on again, off again dating thing with Tim Drake. And I still haven't reread chunks of the pregnancy storyline, so I don't know. Maybe it was really well handled. But
It was most assuredly not. Although the interesting thing is the character always bounded through it really well. It was the stories and the books themselves were always a bit iffy, but Stephanie Brown, and there was something about this character where she was just really there was a practicality about the character, and she was just like, no, my parents are shit. I'm just going to do the opposite of everything they do. And if they try and give me shit, I just remind them that they are a mess and I'm doing the best I can.
she is very much the doing the best I can person. Where Tim Drake is sort of like preternaturally good at everything, Stephanie Brown is not preternaturally good at everything. But that's
She
not
kinda
going to
trips
stop
her way
her
through
from
the fights,
trying.
yeah.
And it's interesting. She becomes very much a model for that. She doesn't have crazy natural giftedness like Batgirl Cassandra Cain, who's been trained from birth to be a super crazy martial artist. But Stephanie Brown is doing her best, essentially. And so there comes a point in the increasingly dark Batman books where, and you'll have to help remind me because I went back and read chunks of this, but it's been a while.
It
was in
got
a
unreadable.
storyline called War Games. And for some reason, Robin and Batman were fighting. And Robin, I think, decided to stop being Robin, or did he get fired from being Robin?
Wait, which one? We're talking
Tim
Tim
Drake.
Drake.
Tim
yeah.
Drake.
Tim Drake, currently headlining his own book as Robin, puts away or gets fired from the mantle, one
I
or
think
the
Batman
other.
kicked him out, and Batman just out of spite gives Steph the costume. It's out of spite. He's trying to do the I've got a new kid now kind. It's so weird.
There are arguments raging to this day about exactly what people were doing and why, and whether it counted. But essentially, for the space of a few issues, and the covers, as we can see, you can pull up, I think, Stephanie Brown steps into the mantle of Robin and starts training with Batman.
And it was great because I love the energy that it brought for the while that it was running, which was she had more at stake than any other Robin before, which is I love having her father be the Clue Master, who's this. Not only is he's a supervillain, he's not a very good one.
Yeah.
And he's a terrible father.
So there's kind of a weird similarity with him being a supervillain, but not being a terribly good one, with her being a Robin and not being a terribly good one.
Her whole thing, and like at the beginning, it's just to spite him, but like it eventually just becomes, I have to break this cycle of crazy, because my father is terrible, and I'm worried that I'm terrible.
Now, as I understand it, one of the main problems with this run is that it was less that it became a book about her and more that the story was still kind of about, like, whether Tim Drake was Robin.
Yeah.
And it just happened that the mechanism of, he was so not Robin that someone else was Robin. Like, that was still sort of the place the story was coming from. But the way they resolved it, and please correct me if I've got these details wrong because it's been a while since I reviewed, but essentially I think Batman decides she isn't ready, fires her from being Robin, and she goes out on her own to prove that she can do it, but ends up caught in the middle of a terrible sequence of events.
And is that where she gets the name Spoiler? Because she's like, I'm not going to be Robin, I'm going to go be Spoiler?
She had already been
She was Spoiler, then she becomes Robin.
Yeah. She kind of graduates from random side hero to you're the new Robin.
Sure.
Gets fired from being Robin, decides to go out and confront one of the bad guys on her own, I think, and
Black Mask.
in a story that was designed to sort of make us take this all very seriously, dies at the hands of Black Mask.
Yeah, over a period of days.
So becomes the second dead Robin.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Now, again, this storyline was basically about what this did to Tim and what this did to Bruce. And over time, after that happened, they established a fairly, as I understand it, unpopular retcon.
It was a weird retcon. It was not a great one, but it did lead to the Batgirl books, which is kind of why we like, yeah, all right.
When they wanted to get her back, they essentially established that Leslie Tompkins, a physician or psychiatrist?
Physician.
Yeah, and longtime ally of Bruce Wayne. They established
She's one of the few who knows his Batman secret, yeah.
They established that she had essentially faked Stephanie Brown's death. Well, she was close to death, but Leslie Tompkins, to teach Bruce a lesson, basically.
What? Yeah, that's like
allowed everyone to believe that Stephanie Brown had died,
and then let Stephanie get away.
Hid
amazing.
her. She escaped. It's not amazing. It's all. Why do you know what happened?
No, that's just like what a retcon. Like that's I know. But like it's just like. I didn't know that. Like, this is the piece of information that I needed. Oh my God.
So we complain about the New 52 a lot, but part of what it was designed to do was to take, because at the point, if it was 2010 and you were starting to read comics, someone would sit you down and explain all of this. And they were like, that's too much. Now, unfortunately, when they decided to clean it up, they just straight up took Stephanie Brown out of the universe. Yeah. That was their fix. And we were like, no, bad fix. No, fix your fix.
That also does not fix it. By the way, New 52 also doesn't fix it.
But the thing that led to, other than one of my favorite Robin costumes, which I will say, Stephanie Brown's Robin costume was one of my favorite, was like, that was what really broke my heart, I was like, oh, what a good-looking Robin.
She would have been a good Robin. God. And there are arguments about basically whether it countered or whether Bruce was just doing it to make her mad. But essentially, they say pretty clearly in canon, like, she was a Robin and she died in the line of duty. Like, that's a thing that happened. And she deserves to be there.
But we then got one of the best. She eventually comes back as Batgirl and we got one of the best Batgirl reboots.
Written by Brian Q. Miller. Really wonderful series. Ran about 24 issues.
Amazing run. And her best run in Batman Incorporated, which is one of those Batman books that I really love. It was one of the last issues of any Batman book before the New 52 pop, and it was Stephanie Brown as Batgirl in a British all-girls school for assassins, and for like teen girl assassins. It was amazing.
I think that's the reason we got her back in the New 52 is that I think that issue actually came out post New 52, but Grant Morrison was like, I'm not paying attention to your universe changes. I'm just still writing that book I was writing.
Batman Incorporated.
So he just put her in there, and we were all like, wait, does that mean she exists again? We're confused.
And she had a huge fan following, and that was an amazing
relatively
book.
Huge.
I mean, like, no, it was there though. It was big and it was loud.
I was in it, so I feel like it existed, but I'm trying to be realistic about our numbers.
But it was an interesting take on Robin. It was a new take on Robin. I thought it was the last take on Robin, and then
Oh, and side note, Stephanie
Yeah.
Brown is still around today. Now she is spoiler, and the big debate is basically that we're not sure whether her history as Robin still exists, because dark stories like that are the kind of thing they were trying to clean up in their history, but we don't want to lose the fact that she was a Robin in that. So we're waiting to kind of...
And
So,
I got to
like,
admit, I'm
she-
such a big
and-
fan of the spoiler suit,
And
too.
she
so-
never really fully existed in the New 52 except in Batman Incorporated,
She does
correct?
now, though.
Now she does.
Well,
Or,
but now
like-
it's not New 52. Now it's Rebirth, right?
It's not a real universe change. It's the
It's
same
soft.
universe, just later.
Is it?
No, I mean, she came in pre-Rebirth.
And she did. She started showing up again in like
Yeah.
one of the weekly books, the Batman and Robin Eternal. Batman Eternal and then Batman and Robin Eternal.
Cool, okay.
They brought her back in as spoiler and sort of pretty firmly established her in the universe.
Cool.
Before she's now been, Detective has been a teen book for a while.
Yeah.
And she and Tim were major cast members as of last summer in that.
I need to get back
There's a
into
couple
Detective. I
interesting
love that.
questions.
Red Robin.
Like Duganator was like, do you think there was an active choice to make Stephanie Brown struggle through being Robin where her predecessors didn't struggle? Tim Drake's whole first two arcs were him desperately trying to become Robin. So like I would say that that's not like the, it's the struggle. I think even with like Jason didn't necessarily struggle, but Tim was all about the struggle. Tim struggled with being Robin up until the time he quit. He was always the worst martial artist on the team.
Yeah.
Very, very obviously, and especially even like when they eventually, we'll get to Damien in a minute, but like Damien nearly just decapitates him out of spite. Like when he first meets him, he's like, "Who's this? I'll cut his head off. I can do it." Like this little 8-year-old literally takes him down.
In his time as Red Robin, and for the record, I think current status continuity may be that they've decided in the simplified version of the past that Tim took the name Red Robin from the start. Like,
Maybe.
I think that may be
Yeah.
the current...
I'm not up on my.
There's
on my
also
current
is
reading.
Robin for Robin Hood or not the bird, correct? Well, that's loosey goosey. I've
I
heard
always
both.
assumed that it was Robin Hood, not the bird.
I've
I
heard
always assumed
both.
it was the bird. My bad.
I've heard both. I think it depends on who you ask. It's one of those things that may not be actually a real deal.
Bats are animals and Robin
let's see,
is an animal. I just assumed.
The question is it the same school that Dick is stationed at working with Spiral and Grayson?
Okay, so Dick is a secret agent later.
Grayson's a great book. Is it the same book? Is it the same school? The British boarding school?
I
I don't know. I should know. I feel like I
I don't
should
think
know
it
that.
is. Like I've only read a few issues of it, but it doesn't
that
seem
school
like it.
makes me. First of all, it's the school is like the kids are being. One of the teachers is like the son of Professor Pig, which I love, which is one of those villains that I'm just.
You love
I love
Professor Pig.
I have a Halloween costume. I do. I love Professor Pig.
Don't look surprised.
Don't look
You know-
surprised. I literally
Of
show up in the
course he
signal
has
boost
that.
in it.
Of course he has that costume.
And
I think my favorite Professor Pig moment is in the Batman and Robin, is Grant Morrison run, where he's like dancing as he's telling like.
where he's got yeah, and he's like doing
and
his
in, like,
sexy
his own
dance. Oh, it's
spotlight,
so
he's doing like a
awful.
sexy dance, and then like at the end, Damian Wayne Robin is like, "You just redefined horrible" or something like that.
You've just. He
So
says.
that might be an interesting place to jump in. Who
Well,
is
wait, before we-
Batman and
before we
who
do
is
that-
Robin?
I want to bring. I brought the cards.
What?
It's the DC cards. I thought this was appropriate. Maybe we all open.
Are we doing it now or like
Let's
I
open
don't
a
know?
pack.
Like,
You want to
we're-
open a pack? Just a bit. Come on.
You are a pusher, man.
A sweet pack. No, we don't want this.
I'm going in for one. Thank you for Professor Pig. There we go. Professor Pig is a great Batman villain.
He took the Wonder Woman, but
I did.
I have
There's
to share
another
Wonder
Wonder
Woman.
Woman.
There we go.
I'm going to take
There we are.
Deathstroke because we're talking Batman.
Nice.
We don't have to spend too much time on this, and we can in fact talk about going to Damien while we're
let's go to
looking
So
through our
Grant
cards.
Morrison spent some time writing Batman.
So one of the interesting things that Grant Morrison wrote Batman, and one of the cool things he did with Batman was he made Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne was actually still Batman, but Bruce Wayne was off doing other things. Or eventually he vanished for a while.
He
dead.
vanished to
He's
go
dead.
establish Batman Incorporated. I believe.
Well, this was this before or after this? This was before this. Before Batman Incorporated, he was dead. He was because he was traveling through
Batman
time.
R.I.P.
Yeah.
Golden Age Superman. That's a win.
Love this. Cosmic Odyssey.
No, I've just been totally distracted.
Mr. Bones.
Sorry, I didn't
Why
mean
would you do this to us?
Why would you do this?
I planned at 8
Jericho.
o'clock to pull the box out and surprise you guys.
Mitzel Plicknick.
Thank you.
And I waited until 8:08. I got Deathstroke hologram.
Nice.
Solid.
Nice
Oh,
boots.
Save that for
Look at them boots.
all them boots.
Wow.
I got Mitzel Plicknick.
Deadshot.
Wow.
just pounce my Mitzel Plicknick. So Dick Grayson, the original Robin, becomes Batman.
This is how bodies work.
This is how bodies work.
Golden Age Superman. He's got things on his wrists. It's nice. There we are.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, Damian
Hey,
Wayne.
Speedy.
So Dick Grayson.
Oh, he's
becomes
got a
Batman.
heroin problem. He's a junkie.
Yeah, he is
Poor
a junkie.
Roy.
Poor Roy.
It sucks to be Roy. We should just do an episode called "Sucks to Be Roy."
Sucks to be Roy.
Sucks to be Roy Harper.
Oh man.
Oh, look at this killer walking
Yeah,
the door.
worst ex-girlfriend ever. That was a whole story. But so
You were
Dick
right.
Grayson. Oh, Roy, not me. Dick Grayson becomes Batman. The original Robin becomes Batman for a while, and because of that, Batman is now.
And he's hesitant
fun.
to take it. He's hesitant. He doesn't want it. He pushes it away. So does Batman the Battle for the Cowl? That's after the RAP run, right?
Yeah.
And like all the so.
He dies simultaneously in a giant crossover and in his own book. In the giant crossover, he dies in a cosmic way, and in his book, he dies in a helicopter crash. But either way, he's thought
Either way,
dead.
he dies. He dies twice.
Yeah,
It's
he
a little
dies
weird.
twice, but he's actually not dead.
Well,
he just goes underground.
No one's ever. He's lost in time. It's a
Yeah,
whole thing.
he was shot
Sure.
with a magic beam that sent
Oh,
him
jeez,
through
all right.
time.
Any monitor.
Which is almost exactly what happened to Captain America.
This is how we get Cowboy Batman and Samurai. We get all these we get Pirate Batman. We get all
There's
these.
a series called The Return of Bruce Wayne.
And it's just nothing but action figures. It's great.
It's great.
Pilgrim
but
Batman.
Battle for the Cowl. I'm trying to that was a big
It's a three-part series, which was basically all of these, because the Bat family is so extensive at this point.
Yeah.
It was everybody sort of deciding, does somebody take up that mantle, and if so, who?
Yeah, and Tim Drake is like, Dick Grayson, it's got to be you, and Dick Grayson's like, I don't want it, and Tim Drake's like, it's got to be a Batman, so I guess I'll go do it. And then he goes to do it, but then in the meantime, Jason Todd,
Hey, we forgot to mention he's back.
He's back.
He's back.
No one
and
dies.
he's crazy.
and not only that, he's taken on the mantle of the Red Hood, and he's crazy, and he's essentially like sort of the return of Azrael, and he's like, no, it's cool to kill criminals
They
as
don't
long
know
as
who
they.
Azrael is, or
Yeah.
now.
Yeah,
You're going too deep.
sorry, that's a whole other episode.
It's another Batman character. Oh Lord.
That's a whole other episode.
That's post Bane breaking.
But suffice to
Back of
say,
the Bat.
Dick Grayson becomes Batman. He becomes a
reluctantly
lighter,
takes it
friendlier,
on,
your
but
friendly
he's-
neighborhood Batman.
yeah.
But because of that friendly neighborhood Batman, we get a character called Damian.
And it happens in the meantime, right? He gets
Yeah.
there before the
Yeah.
death of Bruce Wayne. Poor
Barely.
Damien. He shows up, and the first thing that happens.
Damian is like 8.
So there's a
When he
long
first shows up,
time, interesting semi-villain, semi-supporting
Demon.
character named Talia al Ghul,
Talia,
daughter
daughter
of the
to-
demon,
daughter of the demon.
Raz and/or Raish al Ghul, depending on who you
Raz
ask,
Raish al
on what
Ghul.
day.
Al Ghul, but is it Rays? Rosh?
Al-Ghul, half Rosh.
Ras.
So, all Ghul, all cop. So there was an old, wonderful book called Son of the Demon, where it is implied that Batman may have shagged Talia, that they were shagging.
And
I mean,
there's
we're
a
all
baby.
pretty sure that happened
they were
at
shagging.
several points.
They've shagged quite a bit.
Yep.
Bless
She is the classic semi-untrustworthy daughter of the bad guy who is just, beautiful and dangerous.
Some books she's there to help. Some books she's there to ruin everything. You never know.
Some books
Definition
she
of the
just
femme
hasn't made her mind up
fatale.
yet.
But she decides to grow her own kid with Bruce. Like she apparently has a kid. Although I think raises him basically in a petri dish. She grows. Damien is
Does she?
born from
Was it
birth?
a natural birth?
No, I don't believe it was. I think Damien was actually test tube, and there's a couple of them that they get into later.
Really?
Yeah.
I missed that. I thought
Damien
it was just a regular baby.
was given no human contact and was raised to be this ultimate assassin.
That part for sure. Once he arrives, once he's a baby,
There's another brother later at the end run of Batman and Robin.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's some other stuff, but he's
raised by so they run the League of Assassins, and the Al Ghul family
Yeah.
essentially. So he is raised from a young age to be a little killing machine. Mama's
is.
little killing machine.
Sweet little baby boy.
Yeah.
And she sort of just drops him off at Bruce Wayne's house, going I want him to learn a little bit about his dad, so he's your problem for a while. Hopefully he won't murder anyone.
This storyline
Have
is
fun.
called Batman and Son. It is, of course, before Bruce dies.
And yeah, he's spoiled. He's mean.
He's cranky
He's cranky.
and
He's
violent.
He sees Alfred as just the help, not a family
yeah.
member.
he almost
he's a-
beheads Tim.
Yeah,
I think he stabs Tim.
he's a petulant, I deserve everything entitled sociopath.
He's awful.
Which
Yeah.
is definitely the answer to what could you do with Robin that would be just real different.
And it's like,
Yeah.
like they tripled down on Jason Todd. Where I was like, this is, but it's different.
It worked.
It's different.
It worked. There
Not
was
at
something.
first.
Should not have worked.
It should
Yeah,
not have
it
worked.
really shouldn't have. And that's like every single time I read any Damian Wayne story, I'm like, this shouldn't work. Why do I like it so
People
much?
hated Damien. But I'm pretty sure every single one of us just came right round
Oh, we
eventually.
did. Well,
Like,
the two things made it work, I
Yeah,
thought, was
what?
first
Tell us.
Dick Grayson's Batman, which was that Dick Grayson's Batman was having fun, enjoying himself, was the smiley Batman, and then you had the dark and brooding.
Really seriously,
But you have the dark and brooding Robin with like a bit of the, well, like, don't worry, old chum, was like a little bit of Dick Grayson, kind of like, I'm Batman, yeah, and having like. It kind of did the role reversal of, instead of the brooding Batman and the happy Robin, we had the happy Batman and the brooding Robin.
the well-adjusted
Yeah.
Batman trying to teach the Robin to appreciate life.
Bat cow.
Yeah, oh, geez, Bat Cow. Yeah, I forgot about Bat Cow.
Yeah, there's a fight in a slaughterhouse, and they're fighting Professor Pig in the slaughterhouse, and
Always with
and
the
a
pig.
cow ends up like saving Robin from, or like helping to
Damian
defeat
Wayne Robin,
Yeah,
yeah.
Damian Wayne, but helping to defeat Professor Pig, and the cow has like a weird bat furry thing, and Damian just says, "I'm a vegetarian now, and this is Bat Cow." And he adopts the cow.
he adopts the
And the
cow.
cow is still at Wayne Manor. There's still
he
Bat
adopts
Cow.
the cow. And it's Bat Cow.
So, and there's an interesting, like, this is a run written by Grant Morrison, I think drawn by Frank Quitely for the first arcs,
A little bit of
probably
it, yeah.
shared later on. But it's a really cool dynamic because you get essentially Dick Grayson trying to figure out how to raise a little angry, damaged kid.
Who's not his child.
While wildly
Yeah.
different from him, like, he can't help reflecting on the similarities of, like, how did Batman make this look so easy?
Yeah.
Like, taking some kid in and telling him what to do and trying to keep him alive and, like, thank you for this Bat Cow picture. Oh.
And this is Bat Cow. Oh, I love Bat Cow. And just Robin covered in blood.
So yeah, Damian Wayne.
Damien eventually, and I
Love
think the
Bat
thing that
Cow.
made people love Damien was eventually was not that he was the dark, grim, and gritty, but like he did a similar thing to Cassandra Cain, who's one of the Batgirls, which was that he eventually realized that he wanted to be. He wanted to be Robin. Like it was like there's a moment in his reality where he realizes that he's this big mess, but he just decides desperately that he wants to be better, and he kind of doubles down on the notion of just being a healthy human being. I mean, he doesn't
there's
get
something to
there.
be said for what. Like, so Jason Todd was never aware
Jason
of
Todd was never
his
interested
shortcomings,
in-
and he
no.
wasn't interested in becoming anything better. He just wanted to be Robin. Damn it, I want to be Robin. I'm Robin. I'm better than this. I'm Robin.
And
Acknowledge me. And Damien's like,
Damien's
I
aware.
can totally be Robin. I have a tendency towards murdering people. I don't want to be that way, but it's still a part of who I am. So I just need help. I might kill that guy. Just try to pull me back.
And it creates because of that, and also because he's a very, very superior human. He is filled with his own sense of self-importance.
He's a little arrogant kid.
He's very much, I will be Batman one day.
Yeah.
And then you will all answer to me.
Well, even
And
even
everyone's like,
in
okay, Damian.
Yeah, whatever, kid.
Yeah.
even in the Grant Morrison run, as early as that is in his particular history, he's only 10, and he's already telling Nightwing, who's now Batman, he's saying, look, if you don't want to be Batman, I'll be Batman. He's like, you're
Yeah.
10. He's like, yeah, well, you
better
apparently,
than
A, don't want to be it, and B, are really bad at it. I'm actually really good at this. I can totally be Batman right now. Like, I was raised by assassins. I mean, you get that, right? Like, one of my favorite moments in that book is they're like crouched on a roof and they're like waiting to attack, and like Dick Grayson, Batman, is trying to give him like some advice on do this and do this, and you've got that hood on, and a hood that can be a blindfold, and he like pulls the hood over him because he's got the hood, he pulls the hood over him, and he's like, I could fight you blindfolded. Like this is not a problem for me. Like it's a problem for you, which you
was also-
shouldn't be Batman. Like this is a problem for you.
It was a great Robin costume redesign, I'll also say. They did
Yeah.
a little more tweaking with Tim Drake's Robin that I really enjoyed.
This is a non-canon source that I just want to throw out there because it's one of my favorite things. But one of the things that really made me love Damian was a random piece of essentially funny fan fiction. Did you ever read the Letters to an Older Bat Brother?
No.
I think it was published on Comics Alliance or somewhere. This was
no.
after Dick had stopped being Batman and was not as much in Damian's life. Somebody wrote a series of essentially crayon on like writing paper letters from Damian to Dick Grayson, who he does not miss at all. But Alfred thinks you should visit.
That's so.
Like,
Oh, it's
they're-
so Damien.
it's
It's so Damien.
It's
funny.
so
Oh, my
adorable
God.
because they are written in the voice of like an actual 10-year-old pretending not to mind that Dick's not around anymore, and it's fine. Like, and
Dick's
he's like,
fine. I don't care.
Alfred said I should draw you this picture.
He is-
and like, it's the cutest thing in the universe.
He's so the quintessential awful little brother. Like he's the quintessential awful little brother.
But like you love him, love him for it, like,
and it's
'cause
really
he's actually really good at being Robin.
And his relationship with Stephanie Brown's Batgirl is delightful because she's just like
Because he's competent and she's decent
Yeah,
and
but-
like has some common sense, whereas he's just like blah, 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 and she's just like, you're a tiny murder child. I don't know what to do. You're a disaster.
but she understands that emotionally he's completely vulnerable, so she just takes advantage of the fact of like you may be able to like do all this better than I am, but you're short and you're dumb, and he's like, no, I'm not. Like dumb. She realizes
She's a great older sister.
So she's just
Yeah.
like poke. She's like, oh, fuck, poke. Just like a Batman, I can poke. And more recently, Damien's interactions with Superboy, the new Superboy,
So there's
You've been telling me about this. I
currently
wanna
a
read
book
this
called
really bad.
Super Sons.
Super Sons. Holy cow! Oh, this book is amazing. Some genius decided that Superman should have a kid. Whoever that is, I will give you my money. But Superman has a son, and they realize that little Jonathan, who's having trouble with his superpowers, and he's not that responsible, and he's trying his best, but he's got superpowers and it's tough. And then Batman's got Damian, and Damian's a ball of violence and trouble. And there they are. And the two of them kind of hang out and are like trying and Batman and Superman are like, we got to get our kids to like start working together because they're going to be in each other's lives, and they need to be friends.
Yeah.
Because if they're not, that's bad. And Damian does not like Jonathan. Damian is a mean little fuck. Damian refers to him as the alien, and is basically you should just leave. You're not safe. You're a danger to this planet. You're a problem. Go back to where you came from. And is just like constantly just like getting at him, and just like is there to just make him cry. Like that's his whole thing. Is just you crying, so alien? Good. You're crying?
You crying?
You crying?
Huh?
These your friends?
Crying?
They're all gonna die because of you. They're all. And he's just like, and Jonathan eventually is just like, you're an asshole. It's just like, eventually it's just, no one likes you and you're an idiot and I can pick you up and throw you into space. Just shut up.
Nuh-uh.
And watching them eventually they eventually come together to just Batman and Superman are trying to do like team building exercises to get the kids to like cooperate. And it finally kind of happens and like, yay, we can finally cooperate. Punch, punch, punch. And it's just like, and they're like, oh God.
But the thing that I love about Damian
great.
is that he's such an adult. Like
all the worst ways.
he feels like the worst kind of adult stuck in a little kid's body. Like he's that trope to me. Like, and that's what I love about him so much is it's like the character in Interview with the Vampire. Like she's stuck at that age forever. Like I feel like that's what Damian is. Like he's just
Damian's
little
so
kid
ready to be an adult.
Yeah.
Well, and there's this sort of.
Yeah, it's more than ready. He is one already in a lot of ways, but he
lot of
still has
ways.
all these stupid little kid problems to deal with.
And he's an emotional
Frustrates him.
wreck.
Sorry,
Yeah,
you were
no.
saying.
It's interesting because there has been basically since the time Robin appeared, there's been this ongoing debate of like, is it responsible to put kids in combat? And sometimes they deal with it seriously, and sometimes they basically opt to say like, look, don't deal seriously with this question, or you'll ruin the point of comics. Like, and there's sort of. There's something to be said for both sides of that argument, which is sort of like if you deal with this too realistically, just like thinking through vigilante justice in general, you run into some insoluble problems that don't give you good narrative rewards.
You can explore responsibly or irresponsibly.
Yeah, and so that's like, but an interesting answer to that question is to basically create characters like Damian Wayne, where you're sort of like, he'd be more damaged and dangerous if they didn't like let him be Robin.
Yeah.
Like, because training him to sort of use his damage for good there's an argument to be made for sort of being like, you're rescuing this kid. There's, you could probably also write a perfectly good book where he's not allowed to punch people at all under any circumstances. But like, they've chosen an interesting way into doing kind of a modern Robin, which is sort of like, the kid was already so messed up. The best thing you can do at this point is to try to give him a code of justice to go with his like hair-triggered temper and insane training.
And I've always enjoyed the relationship that Robins have had with Superboys and that Robins have had with Batgirls. Whether it's like Dick Grayson and like Barbara Gordon, the original Batgirl, and they're kind of like weird, like flirty older girl, where like Tim's just like, you're pretty, oh God, but girls, but pretty, or. Tim Drake and Kal-El, Superboy.
Oh yeah.
Well, spoiler was a whole weird thing, but like Tim Drake and Superboy was like the clone Superboy was like one of my favorite relationships. Connor. Back when Connor was a little goofy and like not taking anything seriously at all, and like Tim Drake's just like, I'm going to murder you if you don't just focus, please, for 5 minutes.
Please.
It was like having a friend with ADD. Like there's an amazing Superboy book where it's just Superboy and Robin hanging out for a while, and like Superboy has gotten a paper bag and cut out bat ears and is doing the 1960s Batman. Look, old chum, use the bat monitor to see that bat hottie over there. Oh, and just Tim's just sitting going, we don't kill, and eventually Cassandra Cain
Tim
shows
doesn't
up.
have much of a sense of humor either. Like he's
fine, but he's like, this is serious business.
straightforward,
Now
like-
that you
Sure.
introduced like Damien as a foil, pretty much everyone has more of a sense of humor than Damien.
Because Damien has no humor. Like he's just a murder
He'll be
machine.
snarky, but like upset Damien.
Yeah,
He's not.
he's a holy terror.
Yeah.
He's terrible twos, but as a 10-year-old, trying to be an adult.
5 terrible twos all in a row. We should probably mention the one. Well, there's some other iterations of Robin in continuity and out. There's currently a street gang. I'm not kidding. Called the Robins.
So 2015, 2016, there was a book that ran about 12 issues, I think, called We Are Robin. And this
read
was, I've only read the first half, so you have to tell me how it ends.
Yeah, I only wrote the first one.
It's
or two,
interesting. Like it never goes to where it needs to go, but like it was an interesting thought of basically a bunch of like kids getting together to like sort of. They're kind of doing what they do at the end of The Dark Knight Returns, of like trying to make like an underground system of like superhero street gang that vaguely looks like a breakdancing troupe from 1986. Like
Which I think is pretty cool. Like that's a pretty cool premise. I really like the premise.
That was done with like Batman 100. If you ever read that, it has kind of like the whole idea of the support team of like a whole bunch of people doing one thing. It works. It's fun. It's not my favorite read.
And there was one character who was created in the Scott Snyder Batman run that started in 2011, which is a great run, for most of which Damien is Robin. But there is a side character introduced in that whose parents get attacked by the Joker in a big storyline, and his name is Duke Thomas.
Yep.
And I was going back and through reading We Are Robin because I was like, I need to fill in the gaps. And there's a weird, like, is he a Robin? Because aside from that, he has mostly been not Robin. He has been the primary supporting, like, the sort of sidekick character in the Batman book of the last year, but he goes by Lark?
Yeah, he's not quite a Robin. Like he's something else, and I love that the Bat universe is large, and there's a lot of room for people to do what they do.
You know who we haven't touched on yet at all?
Well, there's one big one, but
There's Carrie Kelly.
I was going to say, like, we got to talk about Carrie
we gotta
Kelly.
talk about Carrie Kelly.
Because she is the most influential Robin. Outside of continuity, she is the big Robin that she's a Robin that people identify.
Yeah.
And it is a very, very important piece of canon, despite the fact that technically she's not in continuity.
In continuity, yeah.
Dark Knight Returns is a Batman book, which is kind of the
85, 86?
85, 86, yeah. Frank Miller.
And it's a very important book, and it defines the end. It was written as a form of like the end of Batman, of like what the end of Batman would be.
It was imagining an old Batman coming out of retirement, essentially, and like the messed up world around him and what that might look like and what it might do to him and other characters in the DC universe in this sort of unpleasant near future kind of situation.
86.
It's among the most influential comics ever written.
Sure.
Well, and it's in that like 80s like deconstruction, like completely ripping the sort of like ideas of superheroes apart and like reimagining them and stuff like that, like Watchmen and newer, grittier
I would
stuff.
say it is one of those books, like many groundbreaking films, it is one of those books that suffers in some ways from the fact that you can never read it with eyes from before it happened now.
Yeah.
Because it had such a strong influence on storytelling and the other books around it that you go back, you read it, and I think in a lot of ways it's still a very interesting story, and some things about it hold up really well, but other things, they're no longer new ideas because
Yeah.
they've successfully transformed comics.
Yeah.
So it's hard to apprite how much impact it had at the
to us
time.
now. It was novel at the time. It's not now.
It's been recycled into sort of its own tropes. Its own tropes have been eaten alive. But she was a very.
But in the meantime, so it's the future, and Gotham's even more messed up, and there's a gang called the Mutants running around making everything terrible.
With great hair and great glasses.
It's a cool, very 80s future, and Batman gets
He literally some girl who just like she makes her costume, she gets a slingshot, and she goes out
weird glasses.
and fights crime.
Because
and like,
Batman's in retirement, right? Like at this point, he's kind of like
old.
pulled out. He's old. He's like in his 60s, and he's like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah, and so she just sort of comes in and she's like, I'm into this. I'm right on board. And she's the beginning of the idea of his like attempt to create a new generation of vigilantes. And she's a very, considering how dark that book is, she's a very bright light in that book.
Yeah,
She's
she's
a
a ray of
more
sunshine.
significant, she represents the idea of having some kind of hope for a future.
And that image of her jumping with the slingshot is a very I don't know if Robin ever used a slingshot before, Carrie Kelly, but it was such a perfect.
Batman number
accoutrement.
38.
Oh man, you are. Boom.
He uses the very first appearance of Robin. He's
Is it a sling or a slingshot?
it's a
Good job,
slingshot.
Frank
It
Miller.
actually has a slingshot. I think I even pulled an image of it. If
'Cause,
Chief has it.
Drake's got the sling because Tim Drake uses a.
They even describe it as he pulls out a strange-looking string device and swings it over his head. Oh my goodness, it's a slingshot! And he uses it to hit a goon off of a beam on a construction site.
We've got it. I think we're supposed to.
Well, we need to, because we've got about 15 minutes left at this point. We need to do our 5-minute topic.
Ooh.
And then we need to answer maybe a couple questions before we get out of here. Taliesin, do we have a 5-minute topic?
I don't know if this is a 5-minute topic. Is this really what we're going for?
The highlighted thing?
The one on top?
It says winning topic and underneath it.
Oh, it's all the way at the bottom. Never mind.
Oh, thank God we asked.
Keep going.
Okay, because there was a big question was, do the buttons do anything? I'm like, I'm not sure.
I don't know if we can talk about that for
don't
5
know.
minutes.
So the question that we're putting forward is pitch a sidekick for a superhero that does not have one. And before we start the timer, before we talk about this, I want you to take a second and think. First of all, think of a sidekick that does not have a
hero who doesn't
that
have a
doesn't have a
sidekick.
sidekick. And
Wait, does Wong count as a sidekick?
yes. No going down that route.
I don't know if he counts as a sidekick.
I mean, he kind of does.
Didn't
He's a
you start the
sidekick.
timer on us?
All right, and
Go.
you're first.
Wait, why am I first?
Because you're at your working counter.
Do it. Do the thing.
It's hard to be first, isn't it?
No, it sucks to be first. I don't know.
I'm gonna pick one. I never start.
Do it.
All right, go
for
All
it.
right. She-Hulk. I don't know if she's ever properly had a sidekick.
I don't think she has.
And the truth is, she doesn't 100% need one. But you have a cool opportunity. She's had some great supporting cast character members, but Hellcat as a research assistant and superhero friend is one thing. What you want is somebody who She-Hulk has to basically protect, because She-Hulk can romp through things and be basically invincible. But also lawyers have a ton of legwork. So someone who's basically her legal intern / more fragile because everyone in the universe is more fragile than She-Hulk side thing that she has to sort of mentor. I think that would be it would bring out an interesting side of her character. She hasn't gotten to be a leader yet or to try to raise a new generation. She's Hulk's cousin. To see her sort of be I'm responsible for you in the way that theoretically other people have touched and changed her life, because you can't become a lawyer and a superhero without having figures who've meant that to you. That's what I would put. That's what I would have.
All right.
I got one if you want another minute.
I think I might have one. Go.
Okay. I think since we just reached, I haven't read it yet. The new Mr. Miracle book is right now.
I'm excited for
I
it.
want a Kid Miracle. I want Kid Miracle, Mr. Miracle having a sidekick. I like the idea, especially as if you go with the classic Mr. Miracle where he's an escape artist. I like the idea of him having a magician's assistant, and you could actually have a girl Kid Miracle or
Lady Miracle.
Lady Miracle. I like Kid Miracle for some reason.
Sister Miracle.
She sounds religious.
That sounds religious. Kid Miracle, but like the notion of him actually having like a magician's assistant really rocks my world, and like just someone who just sits and like maybe just has like just their own like a little like iPhone style mother box and just helps out and like instead of the discs.
Yeah.
And then Bart is like, and now we will box for 6 hours.
Or even like giving Mr. Miracle a daughter would be really fun, and having a Kid Miracle would
Baby
be
Barbara!
amazing. So that's my role.
So I'm stuck on this. I can't get past it, no matter
Bring
how
it.
hard I've tried to think of other
I
ones.
know. Go for the Doctor Strange.
No, I'm not going. No, I'm not doing Doctor Strange. Like, I have a weird block on Doctor Strange. I have a hard time thinking past Doctor Strange because I love him so much. But Jessica Jones.
Oh, no.
Interesting.
I would no, and here's why. I think she could have a sidekick who's like a sponsor, like her AA sponsor. I think that would be amazing to have like She-Hulk could be her AA sponsor. So she has like an AA sponsor who runs around with her. I can't get past this. And I've been thinking about it the whole time. She's like, she runs around with her and she like beats up all the bad guys and she's like, oh, I need a drink. She's like, no, Jessica, no. No.
And Jessica just strongly considers leaving her for dead, like at
Yeah.
6 different points in every
like,
story.
in every single, she'll punch a couple guys and she's like, oh, I need a drink. Jessica, no. And she's like, you're next. Jessica, no. I'm your sponsor. You're 100 days sober. You're getting a coin. You're getting a coin.
I'm on the notion of She-Hulk being Jessica Jones' sponsor, because then it's just like, yeah, don't make me angry.
But see, that would be
Wouldn't like
cute
it
because
when I'm
She-Hulk
angry.
would be like, you want to take a swing,
Yeah,
really?
take a swing.
And Jessica would be
Yeah.
like, bam, and you'd be like, it's not,
so that would
not
be the
doing
thing. Like the
anything.
sponsor would need to be stronger than Jessica Jones in some ways,
then-
but like maybe not as like smart or savvy. So like she's still a
She-Hulk is
sidekick.
because She-Hulk is then like can take the punch and is also legal advice when she needs it, when she inevitably gets
my
arrested.
God, they
which is like
should team
half
up.
that book. Half
should
that book
team
is her
up.
getting
She-Hulk would be
arrested.
helping her with crimes, being like, I'm not seeing anything you're
No,
doing. I would be
no,
legally responsible for I didn't
not
see
listening
that.
to
I
anything
didn't
that
see
you are
break
doing.
that doorknob. Oh my God.
So like I know that there's the traditional notion of like a sidekick is like part of it is also it gives a hero vulnerability, which is
team-up,
kind of
though.
weird.
That's
But
not
that's more of a
Team up.
team
Yeah,
up.
like you need like a Jessica Jones sponsor. Like she would actually need to have her powers
I like
also.
it's like reverse vulnerability there. It's like Jessica is the one that's vulnerable, and the
yeah,
sidekick
and
is
like her name could just be the sponsor.
Oh no.
No, that's not a good name. Sponsor.
No.
Come here, sponsor.
12-step. No. I am going to hell.
Substance abuse is serious. I'm just gonna throw the PSA out there.
Cloak and Dagger. I'm just reminding everyone. There's for every PSA we do have Cloak and Dagger.
Yeah.
Which is another. Don't do drug
Comics and
kids.
drugs. They were not
Yeah.
done with. If you watch the episode we've been doing, there have been a lot of experiments with storytelling.
All
and
right, so
their
that's been our 5. Chief Snow, She-Hulk and Jessica Jones both appear as supporting characters in the recent run of Marvel's Hellcat. Thank you, Chief.
Read Patsy Walker Hellcat.
That was our 5 minutes of random. I know we still have 20 seconds left, so I'm just gonna add that giving Superman a child has been the best thing to happen to its book. So like him having a sidekick kid is great.
If you are watching this on any other platform other than Twitch, our show is on Geek and Sundry's Twitch at 7 o'clock on Wednesdays, and you should watch it.
Matt Key, Amy Dallen, Taliesin Jaffe, Wednesday Club. Wow, we've never finished so quickly.
Like
Yeah,
that.
we did it.
That was so easy. That was
I'm
crazy.
proud of us.
I'm very happy.
All right, so we've got about 8 minutes left. What do we have, Taliesin?
Everyone's making fun of the fact that I said shagging. Let's see. Take a shot every time Taliesin says shagging. Enjoy
Well, we
Shield of
just
Tomorrow.
established that substance
Enjoy
abuse
Shield of
is-
Tomorrow now.
It's a real issue.
So which Robin is the Robin in the Teen Titans cartoon? Oh, Chad answered already that. Okay, never mind. Yeah, it's Tim.
Hey, let me ask you this: do you have a favorite Robin?
Tim Drake was my boy,
Tim
but
Drake, me
like
too.
Stephanie.
The
It's
fact
interesting.
that
this-
Tim Drake figured out who Batman and Robin was, I thought
pretty-
was so like
'Cause
that's
it
so
seems
cool.
That's
Like I
the
love
kind
that.
of thing that could be really cheap, where you're like, I magically know everything because I'm a character and I have the audience's knowledge.
Yeah.
But like they made that a central tenet of his character, which is cool.
Which I think is cool, and that's what convinced Batman to be like, all right, I'm gonna give you a second look, kid. I love that. Do you have a favorite?
I don't have a favorite Robin.
I mean, like,
feel
yeah,
bad.
like, Stephanie Brown's my favorite Batgirl, but like she needed the Robin to become that Batgirl. So
Yeah.
But someone was asking what was our favorite Robin Batgirl interaction, and there's like a couple I can think of that I enjoy. Batgirl Year One has some really fun
never
stuff.
read
Batgirl Year One's a great read.
It's Barbara Gordon, right?
It's Barbara
Yeah.
Gordon. It's
Is
a
this-
really
like where in the timeline is this in comparison to?
It was probably written in the late 90s, early
Killing Joke.
2000s,
Yeah,
okay.
and set
It
before.
was a teen. It was like
Okay,
it was like just her like putting on the suit and like kind of going at it, and it's great. It's got Firebug. It's like it got a bunch of classics. It's not Robin, but the Cassandra Cain Superboy crossover from the 90s was
Ooh, I don't think I've read that.
really fun. Like that was my favorite. That was some of my favorite stuff. Cassandra Cain was a great Batgirl. She was. I like that she's still around as
She's
Black Bat.
orphan now.
Was she orphan? She was Black Bat for a while.
I think so, yeah.
They keep changing it up. I liked that she was like the Batman of Hong Kong. Well, the Batman Incorporated, they made her Batman of Hong Kong, which I really liked.
I'm
like
so
it
glad
too.
you reminded me about the Stephanie Brown Damian interactions in that Batgirl book because I loved that and I had forgotten how good
Yeah,
that
she's
was.
really
too.
and like people would love some like let's give some reading recommendations for all the different the Robin
Oh,
kids.
great idea.
And we were
Tim
asked for
Drake,
that.
I would definitely say Joker's Wild.
Joker's
Like,
Wild.
that's his like it's a great book and it's very much him like no one in town like believes that he's up to the task. They all keep saying, "Listen, you got to get Batman. Like you can't do this. You're not ready for this." And he's like, like just stop. Like I am. Like Batman's already vouched for me. I can do this. Like believe me, I can do. And then he does. Like he pulls through in the end in a great way. In fact, I was going to say this earlier. He partially solves the case while playing D&D with his friends.
Yes,
He's dungeon mastering a game,
it's great.
and they're like, so what's the mission tonight? And he actually says the mission. So there's a king who's out of town, and the young prince has to run the town for a while.
He has
to
them
run the
game the
kingdom.
deal. It's
No.
amazing.
An evil
It's amazing.
sorcerer's come into town, and he's playing with the magic. What should you do? And they all have answers, and all of those answers are like, that's exactly what I should do. Sorry, guys, play your own game, and he takes off. So Tim Drake, Joker's
Can
Wild.
somebody pick up the saga of his gaming group?
Oh, God.
Just
Oh
like
my God!
Oh, God.
He's got like the Poindextery kid with the big round glasses named Ives, I believe, and everyone's always like, "What's up, Ives?" And he's like, "Ha ha ha."
the worst.
Yeah.
But like, and
True.
like I would say like
Yeah, look,
yeah,
there it
there
is.
they are. Look at them. They're great.
I think I have also pulled a picture of them actually at the gaming table, if you can find it. But yeah.
I feel like I was really a big fan of the original of the Bloodhaven Nightwing run. I think with Blockbuster.
Nightwing
for-
got his
for
own
Dick
solo
Grayson.
series. It's now collected. It's mostly Chuck Dixon, right?
Mostly Chuck
Yeah.
Dixon. Good
there's a
stuff.
couple
A lot of the stories, like 80s to 90s, like are all Chuck Dixon. Like he was writing a lot of the Bat books for a while.
Very prolific. Created the Birds of Prey.
I mean, the nice thing about Damian is that you can pick up that Batman and Robin, Grant Morrison's Batman and Robin run.
That's a
and
beautiful
just
place to start. He's already here.
watch
Dick
it
Grayson is
happen.
Batman. You can also do Batman and Son and Batman RIP to lead up to that, or you can just jump in with the Batman and Robin, which is the Dick and Damian team up.
I understand if RIP is a
great.
lot for you to read because RIP is
It's a lot.
I love it. It's a lot for some people.
It's a lot.
And then
I also love the Red Robin, like the first few books of the Red Robin.
Red
run,
Robin's
where
a
he's
really
like
fun
fighting Ra's al Ghul and all that stuff. That was a fun run for me.
Stephanie Brown's Batgirl.
Yeah, if you can find it, I think it might be coming back into
it's
print.
coming back into print.
Okay.
And
That's probably the best thing to read to just make you fall in love with that character. They'll fill you in on whatever backstory you need. And then, like, for the modern stuff, I'd say Detective Comics
Sure.
is a team book that's spotlighting the current incarnations of most of these
and
folks.
Super Sons.
And Super Sons.
Super Sons, huge recommendation for a modern book right now.
Yeah.
Like, can't say enough
is
good
Jason
things.
Todd in his own title right now? Because
He's Red
he's
Hood,
done like
and
Red
he's
Hood
got
and
his own book,
Outlaws,
yeah.
But
I think it's still Red Hood and the Outlaws. I haven't been madly in love with any of the versions of that book in the last couple of years, but
I've
like
never
they're
been
still
a
pretty
giant
popular.
Jason Todd fan. Like the best Jason Todd story is the one where you first meet him and he calls Batman a boob.
Yeah,
you big
Death in
boob.
the Family. Death in the Family is a crazy read, though.
It's a crazy read, but
definitely
it's
one to put on your like read the big Batman books list.
Yeah,
Like you
that's up
gotta,
there with, like,
you gotta.
Nightfall and yeah.
And he stayed dead for a really long time
Really
by
long
comic
time.
book standards.
He he didn't come back until 2005, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
yeah. That's a long time. That's 20 years dead.
Yeah, that's centuries in comic book.
And Red Hood was originally the Joker, which I think is cool.
Yeah, well, the Red Hood. Yeah, he has the
Red Hood
identity
gang,
of the
right?
Red Hood. Red Hood, who is the villain that. It was a red mask that you couldn't see through.
Yeah,
And
it's like a
whoever
dome.
was in that red mask fell into the vat of chemicals that became the Joker, but no one knows who the Red Hood was before
Yeah.
they became the Joker. but now Jason Todd wears the red hood because that's not weird.
Yeah.
Because Jason Todd makes great life decisions.
Yeah, he is.
And this has been.
Hyper violent. So that's the Wednesday Club.
Tell us who your favorite Robin is. Tweet it at
Yeah,
me
we wanna know.
because I'm not going to see it in
We
time.
want to know.
Yeah, and in the meantime, now that especially if you're playing the drinking game about shagging, there's Shield of Tomorrow coming up. And in fact,
Guess what?
Where have you gone? That's not supposed to happen.
What is going on?
Don't do that. Ah!
We're coming up. I'm so excited. I'm trashing the set. Stay tuned for Shield of Tomorrow. We have a surprise guest tonight, and I'm really excited about it. And some goodies to show off from Star Trek Las Vegas. And look at our beautiful wall. It's so good.
It is a wall of tech.
Tech Wall.
Okay, stay.
Join us next
for
week.
watching.
Yeah, thanks for watching.
join us
Matt
next
Key,
week.
Taliesin Jaffe, Amy
I will not be here
Dallen.
next week,
She
but-
will not be here next week. We'll have a special guest though.
We'll have a
We
special
can't announce
guest,
it yet.
and we'll figure out what we're going to talk about and let you guys know. If you have suggestions, let us know. We want to talk about what you want to talk about. You're part of the club too. Audience. Matt Key at the Matt Key.
And Amy Dallen at Enthusiamy.
The executive goth at Taliesin Jaffe. Wait, scratch that, reverse it.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.
Watch Shield of Tomorrow.